Okay, I'm gonna do a video here on this 2013 Outback Terrain. Kind of walk through and show you how to use everything. If you have any questions after that, just feel free to reach out to me and I should be able to walk you through it. But with that being said, we'll kind of start in the front of the camper. So up front you have 12-volt battery and then two 20-pound propane tanks. The battery's just sitting on this rack here, so I'm actually going to put a battery box on here. It'll help it so you don't have to disconnect the battery when going down the road. You'll be able to just leave it in here. Also, you'll see on the battery this red knob. There's a little dial on here. If you loosen this dial, it's a battery disconnect function. So whenever you're not going to be using the trailer for a day or more, just turn this knob and then it'll kill all power to the trailer, assuming you're not plugged into electrical. But whenever the trailer is plugged into electrical, I go ahead and tighten this knob, and what that does is it charges the battery as well, so it keeps it on a trickle charge. Also on the front here you have your power tongue jack. If you notice, there's an LED light as well. That's a common area that people forget on to kill their battery. And then extend raises the height, and lower or retract lowers the height. So just pressing those buttons will raise and lower it. You'll see in the front, it might be hard to see in the video, but there's two docking lights, LED. Those help you at nighttime when you're hooking everything up. If you wanted to turn those off, there's a switch right down there for that, and you'll see that turns them off. Walking around over here, you in the front have your pass-through storage. This cover here is for the actual tongue jack. It helps keep snow and ice off of it. If you ever have a problem with your tongue jack, you can pop this little cap off here, and then there's a manual override. It's usually a 10 or 11 millimeter socket, sometimes a 3/4 inch. There's a couple different setups for them. I have the awning out now. You see the blue LED strip light there as well. There's a switch inside. You do not want to leave these awnings out if it's going to be any kind of wind. They're only rated for 5 to 7 miles per hour. So anything more than that, you want to make sure you put them in. Also, don't leave them out in the rain, or the water can pool on the canvas and stretch it. If that happens, it causes it to roll in crooked, and then you'll have some saggy material. Water heater here, I'll show you how to operate that when we go inside. This is your furnace here. There is cold air, fresh air intake, and then your hot air exhaust blows out there. Be cautious not to put anything in this area if you're going to be running a furnace. This here is how you would access the refrigerator if you ever had to service it. There's a condensation line here, so you may see water dripping out of there from time to time, especially in hotter weather. Maybe once or twice a year, pull this little cover off with these knobs here, and then clean out any bugs or debris that might be in there. This here is your black tank flush. So if you hook up a hose to here, only do it if you have the release open for the black water flush, and that'll help flush out your sewage system. Sink on this side here. You'll see a little pink coming out of there. It still has some antifreeze in it from winterizing it. Next to that here, we got a refrigerator. Has your temperature controls on the side here. It's nice and cold in there. And then a light on top. This is another light people forget on, so try to make sure to shut it off when not in use. Stabilizer jacks on the corners. It's a 3/4 inch socket if you're going to hook it up to an impact. Rear window, you talked about the frame not sealing well. We actually doubled up on the seal because even after putting a new seal on there, it didn't seal real well. These window frames are really kind of a thin material, and you can kind of bend them and form them just by hand. So if that ever happens again, you can usually just bend the frame out. But with a double seal on there, I think you're going to be just fine. It's got a seal on the frame and a seal on the window. Satellite and park antenna. Two features not used too often anymore. Make sure anytime you're going to be pulling the slide outs in, you clean any debris off of the top, if there's any sticks or acorns or anything up there. 30 amp electrical service. If you're going to have it down to 15 amp with an adapter like I do here, be sure not to run the air conditioner for an extended period of time or you could melt the plug. It's best just to use this as 30 amp or 50 amp with a dog bone adapter. Black tank drain right here, gray tank drain right there. Again, with the black tank drain, it does have the flush feature if you have a hose hooked up on the other side. But definitely do not hook the hose up on the other side unless this is in the open position. Gray water, it's a little tough to see because the slide out's open, but there's another valve over here which is indicated on the camper right here. I did go ahead and seal all these little areas here with clear caulk, which is why we're videoing this indoors today, because it's supposed to rain out. I wanted them to dry thoroughly first. City water connection here is if you're hooked up to a hose. Freshwater connection here is if you're going somewhere that doesn't have a water supply. But you want to fill this as close to your destination as possible because you're not supposed to travel with a full tank of water. Heading back inside. As you walk in, on the left hand side is your control panel. This is going to have features like your gas and electric for your water heater. When I turn them on, you'll see the light illuminates. Once that light turns off, that means the water heater has lit. It's a self-lighting pilot. Generally, you'll use the water heater in gas mode, but you can use it in electric mode also. The light just turned off, and you can probably hear the flame going inside there. We'll go ahead and shut that off. If you do use it in electric mode, just always be sure to double check to make sure that the water heater is full of water first. There's a valve on top of the water heater you can check to be sure. Just be careful that you don't burn yourself with any hot water if the water was already hot. Slide out controls and awning controls. When I want to put the awning in, I just hit this in button. You'll see it coming on in. And it takes a minute or so to do so. Little red light on the bottom here. That's for your water pump. We're not hooked up to a hose right now. We're just using water that's in the freshwater tank, and we just have a third of water in there with a pump on. So that'll show me how to, I'll show you how to use the water. When we go around to each of the faucets, that's the cold water. You'll hear the motor run for the water pump, and that's the hot water. The motor will run until you turn the water back off. If the motor continues to run for a long time afterwards, that means you probably have air in the line or a leak somewhere. Cold water, hot water, and then coming over here, this is my favorite part because with one hand I usually get wet. We're just going to lay that in there. I'm just going to turn it on lightly so I don't spray everywhere. Hot water and cold water. And we'll hang it back up. And then for the toilet, it's a hand flush. So for liquids, just flush it and release. For solids, flush it and hold it for a few seconds and then release. Other switch here is a fan. And then the first one here is your light. There is a wardrobe slide out back here. It's important to remember when sliding that in, you don't have anything that could obstruct it. Sometimes the curtain can. Anything hanging off the bed could. It has to have free motion. We'll go ahead and check the furnace now, or the stove now. So So to light the stovetop, just put it to the light mode. Use a barbecue grill lighter. One that works, I guess. I gotta get my lighter working here. Oh, there we go. Okay. Oh, come on. My lighter must be out. Like so. And then to shut them off, just turn them to the off position. Refrigerator is self-lighting. If you're going to run it in gas mode, you just push that down into the raised position and then it'll light itself. Most people will leave it in auto mode. It'll choose electricity first, but if electricity were to run out, as long as you'd have propane and a good battery, it would light itself on propane. Fan and a light for above the stove. When we want to run the furnace, just turn it to the thermostat to heat mode and put the temperature up. You'll hear the fan kick in almost right away, but it won't actually blow heat for about a minute. It is self-lighting pilot, so you don't have to worry about that. While we're waiting for that to light, I'll show you a couple other things. Propane gas detector. Green light is good. Yellow light means it's time to replace it, and a red light means it's detecting a leak. 120 volt breakers and your 12 amp fuses. I did hear it light, so I'm back. And yep, blowing hot air. So even when we shut this down, it's still going to run again for about 30 seconds or so, maybe a minute, just to blow any fumes out of the system. Radio here, I have it in the on position, but we're indoors, so we won't get any reception. Turn the volume up, we'll just hear static. To turn it off, just press the button and hold it until it goes off. Make sure you get batteries for smoke detectors. I think there's only one or two. That's actually a carbon monoxide detector as well. The lights have switches on them, so you can control which ones are on individually. Just shut them down as we walk around here. And the last thing would be the air conditioner, or second to last thing. To turn it on, put it to cool, turn your temperature to your desired temperature, and let it run. That cools fairly quickly. Probably within 15-20 seconds you'll start to feel cooler air come out. It'll reach full temperature within a minute or so. It does have a duct function. If you want to send the air through the ductwork to the front and the back, then shut these dump valves off, and now it directs the air. If you have a problem with air not being cool enough, always check your filter here to make sure it's clean. That's blowing cold, so I'm going to shut it off. I'm going to turn the refrigerator off, because that's another thing that if I had it in auto mode and then I shut off electricity, it would then run on the battery and kill the battery. And then to run the slide outs in, just press the slide out button here, and then it's running the rear slide out. You might be able to see the wardrobe closet moving in. And then for the front slide out, we always want to make sure that there's not a door open or like that. Make sure there's no obstructions anywhere. And then press this button until the front one comes in. All the way till it seals tight on the side. It gets a little tight to walk around, but we can still get around. And that should be everything. If you have questions down the road, just feel free to ask.